York Schlagheck.
The one and only.
I found the Mavis, but I think we got a big problem here. Yeah, the gimbal is torn right off. I think this is gonna be a bit of a repair. Not happy with it. Not happy with myself. This was avoidable. Hello and welcome to my channel. The last time I showed you a video on how I crashed my DJI Mini 2. Well, I'm going to give you an update on that today. The last thing I did was I ordered the ribbon cable on Amazon. It cost $33.99 Canadian, which is not really the end of the world for me. However, I have to thank someone who goes by the name Wrong Way Pete for contributing to the repair of my Mavis. And so yeah, Pete, I also owe you a little update, I think. This is how it looks like right now. And I recorded a little bit the step-by-step process. It is extremely finicky. I had more than my share of trouble getting this new ribbon cable, which is in here right now, back in there. Here you see the condition of the drone when I started. See where my finger's pointing? That's the ribbon cable. My first step is to loosen those 4 screws at the bottom of the drone to get off the top cover. The screws are tiny and it is really easy to lose them if you don't pay attention. They also stick a little bit in there. Now it's time to pry off the top cover. This is gonna feel like you're breaking something. And you have to be careful that you don't, because there are little tabs that snap in and that are really tricky to open. What I'm showing here, it's only part of the struggle. Believe me, it took me a while to get this off. Pretty much as expected. The parts inside the drone, they're tiny, and there's a lot. I started by removing the ribbon cable from the side of the housing. The cable is also plugged in at the bottom of this module, which is the GPS module, and it is mounted only on rubber mounts that are really easy to remove. I used my little screwdriver and just pushed them right through. The connector is easily pried off, but be careful so you don't break anything. The last connection for this cable is at the bottom of the drone, so we'll have to take off the bottom cover now. And then there's this heatsink, and it also has to go. One of the screws is hidden underneath that little sticker, and I think that's for the warranty. So once you remove that, you're pretty much on your own when it comes to fixing your drone. Now you can see and remove the connector. This one is a little bit harder to remove because there's some gooey compound holding it tight. And there we go. That's the cable. The only thing missing is the part that tore off. It's on the gimbal. To remove that, we first have to remove 2 screws on the bracket that is holding down the connector. It's on there pretty good. I used the tweezers to separate it. So far, so good. I started the assembly with the cable that's on the bottom, pushing it through the slot from the top. This one was quite a struggle. No matter how you push, you have to line it up just perfectly, and in the end the best thing to do is to use my finger. I also had to cut back some of the compound that was holding the previous connector in place. I hope that's not going to be a problem in the future, as I didn't replace that. I made double sure that this connector is on really good. Time to put the heatsink back in its place. There are 3 screws for this, including the one that originally had the sticker. Putting back the cover should be the easiest thing in the world, but it doesn't line up so perfectly, so you have to kind of wiggle it and push and, yep, snap it in there. If everything is lined up good, the 2 screws from the inside of the battery compartment can go back in. Next step, hooking up the GPS module. And yeah, this one, it was really tricky, believe it or not. Again, the finger worked best. Ha, got it. Next step, putting the GPS module back on its rubber mounts. And this turned out to be one of the toughest things to do. In the end, I used a toothpick to apply just a tiny amount of soapy water to these rubber mounts because they're stubborn. But be careful, water and electronics definitely don't mix, so this has to be just a tiny dab. Yeah, I was struggling with that, so if you use a pin like I do here, be really careful. Those things are really soft and finicky. We're looking at the flex cable the way it is installed so far. There's the long part that is still going back there, and it's got the blue stuff on it. That's a backing because there's glue on there. And I just found out that I'm actually missing a couple of rubber mounts for the gimbal. they look like these ones here. There's two in the front and two in the back at the bottom, and I found that I don't have the two in the back at the bottom anymore. Don't know what happened to them. So back to Amazon I have to go and order these, and other than that I think my cable is almost good to go. So I'm hoping that there isn't any surprises once I try this out, but I'm not quite there yet. See this connection here, this plug here, it goes right about, let me take a tool to show you. Here, this is the tweezers, and it goes right about there. See? There's a bracket with the clamp for this little cable there that'll hold it in place. And, well, by the way, this cable is for the gimbal, for the control. It's hooked up to the GPS and another control board at the bottom. I don't necessarily know what exactly everything does, but I'm telling you, the hardest thing to do, and that came as a surprise to me, see these rubber mounts here, there's 4 of them. This is the GPS unit. Those were extremely hard to get back on. I am cautiously optimistic. You know, with something so finicky, there's always a chance of having a surprise because, you know, a small error. There were a lot of things that I wasn't totally aware of. Every step of this process was actually more difficult than I expected it to be. But however, after a few hours of my patience, I am now at the state where I can almost say, yeah, you can see that's not quite back together. Problem I'm having right now is I'm missing some rubber mounts for the gimbal. They're just missing. I wasn't even aware of that when I opened this up last week. I guess all it would have taken is would have been a closer look at this. However, they should be easy to get. So I ordered them, and I ended up ordering from Banggood because they were cheaper when it came to shipping and the parts as well. I mean, how much can it cost to ship 4 little rubber things that weigh like in the single digit of grams? Like, they're so tiny. But you know, you have to watch where you order from. And yeah, here I'm removing the backing for the long piece of the cable that goes on the housing of the drone on the inside, and there I'm putting it back into place with the tweezers. Well, this is kind of stubborn too. A second look revealed that there are 2 little slots, one on each side, that this slides into, and in the end I put it back with my finger. Next step was to route the cable in a way that it doesn't interfere with any moving parts and is still secured to the inside of the housing with the little sticky things. Now to the rubber mounts. See, the new ones, they have some tabs on there that you can pull on with your tweezers. That's a nice feature because it makes the job much easier. First, however, you have to get them onto the bracket of the gimbal, which isn't really that difficult, but these things are just so small. Once they're in there, you just line them up with the slots in the housing and then pull with your tweezers until they snap into place. In the end, I found it helpful to use the flat tool to push them from the one side while I'm pulling with my tweezers from the inside. The front ones are exactly the same idea, and I even found them a bit easier to do. The last connector is the one that connects directly to the gimbal, the one with the bracket. Because the gimbal is on rubber mounts, I have to hold it firmly with one hand while I try to connect the plug with the other. There, I think I got it. Almost the last step. Put back that little bracket with the two screws that are holding it in place. And then the cable that is, by the way, for the camera snaps into there. And aside from the top cover, you're done after this. Alright, just showing you one more time what it looks like before we put on the lid. Spread those little wings because otherwise they'll get in the way of the cover. Lining up the cover could be a little bit more difficult than it looks here, because it's just very small tabs that has to be snapped in, but it's not a big deal. So I've got reason to be cautiously optimistic. I've got everything back together to the best of my ability, and believe me, it is finicky. It is such a small variety of parts, even the screws. Like, I'm just glad I didn't drop any of them, because man. But the hardest part I found is those tiny connectors on the ribbon cable, to put them into the right place, make them click into position. Even the last one, like at first it felt like, you know, it was wobbly, like it would go in on this side and then it was lopsided, so I had to push it again on the other side, and it seemed like this was pulling it out on the side that was previously okay. So I cannot be sure until I actually try to fly this thing if this is fixed. Yeah, I'm pretty tense, I can't help it, but crucial mistake. I forgot to charge the controller. I guess after a couple of weeks it'd be dead. So there, I have to do that.